Hey guys, it's Kylie from Cantress Media. Today we're going to take an in-depth look at our player's journal. We have an Art Deco and a Classic, so we're going to go through the differences between those. And then we're going to talk about the class-based versions that I have in the shop right now. So let's get to it. Okay, so we're switching to the overhead cam. So here we have our two players' notebooks. You'll notice a different cover on this one. This is the Classic, and actually I'm testing this version, so it's not quite ready yet, and probably by the time that I post this video, I'll have an actual finished version in the shop. But for now, it's going to be useful in kind of demonstrating the difference between the two of these. So this is a Classic, and this is the Art Deco one. I created the Classic one first, so we'll kind of go through this one first. The Art Deco one is definitely my favorite, and I think it looks a lot better than the Classic. You know, to each their own. They are just different styles. So here's the Classic version. So you'll see it does still have that gold foil cover. I am going to edit this a little bit. I want these lines to be a little thicker. So by the time you see this, this is not the finalized version, but there will be one in the shop. So we're gonna open up straight to the first section, which is the character sheets, and you'll see you have two dry erase pages. But essentially everything on here is what you would find on a normal character sheet. I put all of your stats on the side here. Could be useful too if you wanted to add a half sheet or something in here. You would be able to still see all of your stats without having to flip back and forth. Because one of the great things about these journals is you can punch any page and add it in. You have all of your stats here, your languages, your passive perceptions down here, all of your HP, your initiative, your speed. I would write all of these in with pen. In particular, I use a Frixion pen. They're erasable, and you can buy them on Amazon. I can put a link down in the description if you want, but they are very easy to use, and then it doesn't just wipe away. The other reason we have dry erase sheets in here is so that you can very quickly mark stats that change. So in this current HP, we could say I have 10 out of, who knows, 20, whatever. I also do this for my druid character. I have wild shape written in here, and I'll just come in and I'll say, okay, I used one since our last long rest, and then when we take a long rest, I get them all back, and I'll do a little erasing. So that's one reason that it's dry erase. You have it for ammo, you can keep track of your potions that way, any special skills that require you to count how many times between a short or long rest. I would put them down here, and then you can very easily track it with just your dry erase pen or a wet erase pen. Next, we're gonna go to the background sheet. This is where all of your other stuff can fit. So this is going to be just general character creation. You can draw a little picture of yourself up here. You can put in all of your allies and organizations, keep track of your personal treasure and funds, and then all of your background, which you don't really need to reference all the time, but you might want to come back to and look at, as well as your personality traits. Let's just compare this to the Art Deco version. So again, we have the shiny cover, and then when we get to the character sheet, again, you still have the two dry erase sheets, but as you can tell, everything is just organized a little bit differently and is a little bit more compact and just a different style. So we have your stats up here, we have your background and class level and everything up here. This little gray box is all of your stuff for initiative, AC, your speed, your hit points, your hit dice. If you have inspiration, so for instance, you have a bard in your party, you can just come in and do a little check, or maybe it's like 1d8, keep track. You have your proficiency bonus, you have saving throws, you have all of your skills here, and then equipment and passive perception are down here. Over here you can keep track of attacks, so this is very much like the way they have it on a character sheet with the different boxes. And then you have other spellcasting, ammo, potions, and you have features and traits all right here. This does change in our different class versions, and we'll go over those and kind of the differences between a few of them at the end of the video. I'll leave some timestamps in the description so you can jump to that if that's what you're here for. That is just the basic character sheet section, and then here's all your details. I gave a little bit more room to draw in here. I'm not an artist, so I don't ever use this, but there are plenty of people who love to draw out their character and exactly how they look, so I wanted to include something like that in here. And then you have your treasure. I didn't include money on here. I figure you can probably put it right in this section. So that is the difference between the two, at least from that perspective. We're gonna slide it over here and then come back to our classic version. So the next section that you have is the spells. So the first is going to be just your spell list sheet. Also, you'll notice that there is a blank page. I included this so that you could put little tab stickers, which I also sell tab stickers in the shop, so that you can easily flip to this page if you want. You can put tab stickers on anything. Here are your spells for your spell list, and all of your saves and everything are up here. And then you have the actual spell cards. So each of these have VSM, so that's verbal, somatic, material. So if you need that, you will scribble it in or highlight it or whatever. And same with concentration, you can just highlight this flag if it's a concentration spell, and then you can write everything in here. I do have an example. So I mentioned my druid character. So this one is mine, where I have everything written in. And it's crazy. So I have some of my spells listed here, although I don't actually use this because I use a hybrid of this journal and D&D Beyond, which I honestly don't like for spell tracking, and am designing a druid class-based journal for a reason. That's another video all in itself, but you can see here I have Thorn Whip written in, and it requires all of these verbal, semantic, and material, although I have a focus, so I don't necessarily need it, or this cantrip, but you can see everything's written in here in the higher levels, but you can see just in general how I use it there. If it was concentration, I would highlight that in there. So looking at these spells in the Art Deco version, they're really pretty much the same. Again, you can just scribble in or highlight this box, and then I would just check this box for concentration. But you have the same thing, the type and everything else. That's about that. Oh, and then the spell list itself is again very similar to what you had before with your cantrips. I gave a little bit more space in this version than the other. So if we go through the classic, you get a lot of spells and spell cards just in the basic one. If you pick different class-based ones, you'll get less spell cards based on the class. For instance, a barbarian doesn't normally need a lot of spells. They tend to just go in running with an axe. So I decided to kind of cut some of those spell cards out and put in more of the other sections. That said, if there are newer classes where a barbarian can fling spells, I'm speaking in particular, I believe in Tasha's, there is a barbarian subclass that does a lot of elemental spells. You could always buy extra page packs if that's what you wanted, or I would recommend just buying our regular player's journal. It does include enough in here for most classes. So next we're going to look at the people archive and the location archive. It's pretty simple. You have 4 to a page on each side. There is a place for a name, where you met them, and then you can write any notes in here. You can draw a picture in this box. I'm not an artist, as I mentioned, so instead I tend to write their description in here, or, you know, dwarf, female, whatever, right into this box, just so I know in general what they look like. And then we also have the location section, which is set up in a similar manner, but you have the location, whether that's a tavern, or you have a city name, what it is near, and then any specialty shops or inns, and then any description you want down there. Comparing this to the Art Deco version, so here's the people archive, and I'll just actually put them next to each other. I took out the drawing aspect of this. However, I added some occupation and affiliation and a description section, and then you can have room for your notes. And then if we jump back to location, location is pretty much the same thing. Nothing really changed too much. These boxes are where you would write the name of it. So again, it's just a stylistic difference. The next section is going to be the session notes section. So this is where you're going to spend most of your time probably. I had always been losing track of certain things in my notes because I'll just write and write, and some of that is just details that doesn't need to be noted or really written down, but I'm writing it down anyway. So I created a little key, so I have a note, or if this is an event, you can put a little circle, or if it's a to-do, you can put a box or a little exclamation point for important. And then what I do is at the end of the session or before the next session, I review these and either put it over here, or if it's something that we're talking about and I realize, okay, we've heard of a person right now, we've never met them before, I'll write their name over here, what we heard about them. Or same with locations. I do that with the stuff that we found. It's when we come to the important to remember section that I tend to review notes first and then write them over there. And then down here you can write a quick summary. You want to keep it to 1 or 2 lines just so you remember. And then you can write what you plan on doing next session or when your next session is in this box. So that is the classic version. Let's look at the Art Deco version. So the Art Deco version, I flipped it because again, I like to write it on the notes section and then transfer it over here. But also this matches the DM version of this notebook a little bit better. You still have the same sections. However, I put in encounters here because I wanted to keep track of when we fought things. And I thought that might be a good place to add it here. And then the treasure and the loot is all together. I also give a little bit extra room for the session summary. And really, there's only 1 or 2 things that you might need for the important to remember section. I made it a little smaller, and the line for when your next session is or what you want to do is much shorter as well. So it is a little bit different depending on which version. However, I think it kind of gives you more options that way. You can also always, if you liked some of these, but you like some of this as well, you can buy different interchangeable page packs because the sheets will all fit together in one book. The only other section we have in here is the mini map section. So you have I'm gonna flip this. This is one of the good things about a discbound, and it's hard to see on the camera, but this is a dotted grid version of the mini maps. I created this because in my first campaign that I ever played, we did a lot of theater of the mind, and we actually used paper and pen to kind of figure out where we were in the first house in Curse of Strahd. So we really needed a little extra grid paper or something to really denote where we were in that house. Now looking at the Art Deco version here, it's actual grid paper, and I won't turn it sideways since it says dungeon map up there, but you can still turn it sideways if you wanted. And it is a little bit darker in terms of the grid, but again, you can interchange these in any fashion, so you could add this type of dungeon map into this journal pretty easily. The other thing I wanted to do is go over just how I use my particular one. Again, mine is a test version, and she's a little bit different than everybody else's because I test stuff in here. I have a Circle of Fire Druid in here. So when I use this, I actually have a companion. So you see how I have a dark line here. I actually take this out and pop it down like this, so that I have a Firefox named Mozilla. So I have all of most stats down here. While I'm playing, I don't have to have multiple sheets out, and I'm not going to lose the sheet if we say play outside and it's windy or something like that. So it's pretty nice that you could just be able to do that kind of stuff with this. So let's put that back. The other thing that I do with this journal is in the location and people sections. So I'll write all of my notes out, and then I'll come in here and write in more about. Now, I didn't write in their description because so far we haven't met too many people that weren't very, very different that I can kind of associate what they look like to a name. But you can see I wrote where we met them. This is for Rime of the Frostmaiden. So you'll see like Bryn-Shander, on the way to Bryn-Shander. What I do is I look through my session notes. I'll find people's names and then I'll write them in here, or if I actually use my journal correctly and put them in this section here, then I will take that and put them into the people archive. Then that way I don't have to keep flipping through all of my notes in order to find a person's name in here. I can just go to the archive and quickly go through all the different people that we met, and it's a little bit quicker. Okay, so we went over the Art Deco one, we went over the Classic. These are just the player's notebooks. And next, let's go over the classes that I have in the shop. Now, as of this recording in June of 2021, I don't have all of the classes available yet. And once I do, I'll go into more depth with all of them. But also, if you're looking for, say, an artificer or something of that nature, I don't have those created yet because I need to focus on the player's handbook before I start looking at the additional classes in other modules and other books. So without further ado, let's jump over to that. So we're just gonna go in kind of alphabetical order. So we have a Barbarian one, again, shiny cover. I have videos for all of these too that like speed through it in a minute and you can look at it, but I'm just going to focus on the differences in this one. Now, all of the class-based ones are in the same Art Deco style, so they all have a very similar layout. The Barbarian, we have a rage counter in here that you don't have in the Art Deco version. So here's the regular version, hitting all my dice, and you see there's no, this side, this page is just a little bit different than this one. If you're a Barbarian, you probably like to rage. So I have a counter in there, and then most Barbarians, as I said, don't really need to worry about spells, so that section isn't even in here. And you get a lot more of the session notes in your journal instead. So that's the big one for the Barbarian journal. We have the Bard journal. So this one is probably the exact opposite of that. So we have Bardic Inspiration down here. So instead, you can keep track of your dice type, and I also wrote in what it was, but I didn't have room for all of the details, so I also included a player's handbook page number here. But then you can track your Bardic Inspiration. You also have a whole page section for your different features and traits, because bards learn a lot of very supportive things, and it was just easier to give you your whole section than to try to squeeze it on that front page. The other thing is you get a lot more spells. So I did the math and tried to figure out how many spell cards you would need, and I gave you that many. Now, obviously, if you start multi-classing or you take extra feats or anything like that, you're going to need to buy extra spell cards. It's just how it's going to be. This should cover most of your bardic needs. On to the Cleric one. Now this one took a lot of time, and this is also why the Druid one is taking me a lot of time. So this one is designed slightly differently. So this is going to look exactly like the Art Deco version, but the cool part comes from these spells. Now, first you have your cantrips. A cleric can only learn a certain number of cantrips, so that's on here. But if you took a feat again and wanted to add more, you could get new spell page packs. But everything else is already written in for you because clerics already have a list of spells that they know. They just have to prepare it for the day. So now you don't even have to pull out your player's notebook. You can just open it up and look at, okay, here's all my level 2 spells. This is the one I want, and put it on your spell sheet. One thing to note is that there's limited space. So while I tried to include the basics, some spells just don't fit, and I wrote in a player's handbook page for you. So you have all the way up to level 9 in here, and then I did include some extra spell cards because, again, the great thing about D&D, but the hard thing when it comes to making journals, is that you can customize your character and add so many different features and things that increase your spell list. So I added some extra spell cards in the back for you. So next, let's go over the fighter one. So again, different cover, very pretty, it's red. For the character sheet, you have a place to track your second wind and a place to track your action surge. Now, do note that at 17th level, you get an extra one. So I would just draw in another square here, and then you can come in and just take this, and when you use it, okay, I used it this long rest, I'll check it off, but then whenever you get it back, you can just erase. And there you go. So that's the one thing there. And next you have extra feature and trait pages. And then you have some spell cards in here, but not as many as even the basic player's notebook. And then you have everything else. So you also got extra of the session notes in there for you. So that's the fighter one. The monk one. Again, shiny cover. For this one, your thing that I added in here was your key points. So I added a little brief description about what your key points do. And then down here, you have used this rest and total that you have available. So I'd write this part in pen, and then you can keep track in this box. This is for your elemental arts or way of the elements in particular, or any of those spells that require a DC. Down here we have some of your key features. Now these are the ones you get rather early on in leveling. So we have Flurry of Blows, Patient Defense, Step of the Wind. So you can write in a few more. The lines are a little small because you can kind of get a lot as a monk. Or you can use this section here to add even more of your features and traits. The other thing that is so different about this one is that you can choose 2 different monastic traditions. So one gives you shadow arts. So instead of a spell section per se, I labeled it for shadow arts, and then you can write it in much like you would for spells. However, you don't need material components, so even though it's written here, I put a little asterisk. Now I did this because there are some people who might ask you, oh, what does that spell require? And then you could write in, okay, it is material for everybody else, but not for me. So that is the shadow arts section. And then there's an elemental disciplines for the way of the 4 elements monks. So it's very similar. I wrote the first one in for you just so you can see. And because if you pick this particular tradition, you do automatically get this elemental attunement. So it's already written in here for you as an example, and you can use this example even for the other one. That's the main difference. You still have slightly less because you won't have as many elemental spells as a spellcaster would. But again, if you multi-class or something of that nature, you can always buy more page backs. So that's the monk version. One of my favorites is the ranger one. It's got that dark green cover character sheet, which looks exactly like the Art Deco version. It has less spells in this version as well, because as a ranger you won't need as many spells. But the other thing is I have, for those of you who like to be Beastmasters, you can have your companion stats all in here for you as well. Now, if you were playing and you wanted more than just the 2 dry erase sheets, you can order those in the shop, or you could do what I would do, which is take one of these out, slip it over here on the stats section, and then call it a day. Again, as a ranger, you don't use as many spells, so I put fewer spell cards in here and you got more of the other sections. Okay, so that's all the class journals that I have. I am making the rest of the classes. I get that question a lot. It is a lot of work to remake one of these into a different class, so just bear with me. I am planning on still doing a sorcerer, a druid, wizard, there's other ones, paladin, whatever else is in the player's handbook. I also do want to do some of the ones that are in Tasha's, because everybody asks about the artificer. But if there's any other classes outside of that you want me to focus on, you can put those in the comments and I will add them to the list. But just note that I'm going to finish the player's handbook first, and then I will get to those additional classes. It just makes more sense that way. I hope this gave you guys a great look into the differences between each of the journals that we have in the shop. Whether you're looking to buy for yourself or for a friend, I'll leave a link in the description down below to the whole list where you can see all of the different types of players' journals that I have. I also wanted to give a quick shout out to my Ko-Fi page. I'll leave a link down in the description below. My Ko-Fi shop is for people who are looking to give either a one-time donation or see what kind of goals I have behind the scenes. For instance, a new camera is my first goal on there, as well as I want to eventually include exclusive content that's only found on Ko-Fi. Maybe it'll be more of a behind the scenes if you're looking to maybe own an Etsy shop or start a small business based on nerdery. I think those kinds of things might be added to my Ko-Fi shop. For now, there's not a lot to look at, but just know that that's down there and that's going to be a thing eventually. Also, it's a great way to support the tremendous amounts of coffee that I have to drink in order to make sure everything here is running smoothly. That's what happens when you are doing everything on your own. Subscribe for more videos like this every week. Also leave a comment to tell me what kind of videos you want to see. I'm thinking things like player tips for new players, as well as some tips for new DMs, because that's also very hard to do. So let me know what you want to see first, and I'll be sure to look at it, and I'll see you next time. Bye guys! I hope this gave you guys a great look at space for martial archetype fighters. I hit the camera. He's shaky.